wilderness doesn't just surround us. It watches. Its pulse thrums beneath the soil, in the creak of ancient pines, the rustle of desert scrub, the shadowed hollows where light fears to linger. It's a rhythm older than our maps, older than the stories we whisper to tame the dark. In the summer of 2010, Louis Riek stepped into West Virginia's Mananaw National Forest, expecting a weekend of laughter and campfire warmth. He left with a wound that festers still, a story of something monstrous, something that knows the forest's secrets better than we ever will. His tale is not alone. Across America's wild places, from California's towering redwoods to Arizona's sun-bleached canyons, others have met creatures that defy reason, predators that hunt with a cunning that feels almost personal. This is the Forbidden Excavation, and today, we're unearthing the chilling accounts of those who faced the unseen. Are you ready to walk these trails? And if the silence turned to a rasp, would you dare to look back? Louis Riek was a man of routine. A Charleston mechanic, he lived for weekends in the wild, where the hum of engines gave way to the murmur of streams. His friends, Calvin and Rena, were his anchors. Calvin with his quick wit, Rena with her steady pragmatism. In August 2010, they loaded Louis's battered truck with gear and headed for Mananaw National Forest, a 400,000-acre expanse of Appalachian wilderness where pines stand like sentinels and the air carries the sweet tang of resin. Their campsite, a clearing by a burbling creek, was marked by an orange tent that glowed against the dusk. The first day was a tapestry of small joys. Rena snapping photos of chipmunks, Calvin debating kindling techniques with mock gravitas, Louis teasing them both about their city lungs, struggling with the altitude. They were the dream team, as Calvin called them, untouchable in their camaraderie. But Mananaw has a way of reminding you how small you are. The forest's history whispers of lost settlers, of Shawnee tales about spirits that stalk the ridges. Louis didn't know those stories then, but he felt their weight in the pine's shadows. On the second night, a smell invaded their camp. Not the earthy musk of moss, but a rancid stench, like meat left to rot in a hot car. Calvin, ever the joker, deflected. "If that's me, you'd be halfway to Virginia by now." Rena suggested a dead animal, her voice calm but her eyes darting to the trees. They laughed it off, but the odor lingered, shifting inexplicably from the creek to the pines behind their tent, as if carried by a restless wind. The next morning, they hiked west, seeking the source. The forest was alive. Squirrels chattered. A raccoon rummaged through leaves, but the stench clung to the air. Near a rocky outcrop, they stumbled on an abandoned campsite. A torn blanket hung from a branch, scattered like forgotten offerings, a backpack half buried in dirt. No tracks, no signs of its owners. Louis's stomach twisted. Rena's joke about forgotten ovens sounded hollow. Calvin kicked a can, muttering about litterbugs, but his usual bravado faltered. The sight felt wrong, like a stage abandoned mid-performance. They returned to their camp, the forest's pulse heavier, the pines taller, the paths narrower. That night, unease settled like damp rot. They agreed to sleep in shifts, flashlights clutched like talismans. Around midnight, Rena shook Louis awake, her whisper sharp. "Listen." The crickets had fallen silent. A harsh rasp, like steel dragged over stone, tore through the dark. Calvin stumbled from the tent, rubbing sleep from his eyes. They huddled by the dying fire, beams slicing the blackness. A branch snapped, heavy and deliberate, not the skitter of a deer. Something moved beyond the light, low and fast. Its hiss jagged, grating the air. Louis caught a glimpse. Dark fur, black or brown, larger than a wolf, moving with a predator's grace. Its eyes glinted, unblinking, before it vanished, leaving the stench of decay. Dawn brought fractured debate. Calvin wanted to leave, his voice tight. "This ain't a game." Rena argued they'd come too far to flee, her pragmatism a thin shield. Louis, trying to stitch their group together, quipped, "We can't doggone give up after one weird night." They stayed, hiking by day, keeping close to the creek. But the forest had shifted. Paths seemed to twist, landmarks blurred. the air thick with that foul odor. By evening, the stench returned, stronger, swirling like a living thing. Then, a scream, human, raw, distant, shattered the dusk. Louis and Calvin grabbed flashlights and ran toward it, Rena trailing, her call for caution lost in the panic. They found a body in a tangle of bushes, a man in a torn flannel shirt, his chest a ruin of claw marks, eyes frozen in terror. Calvin's voice cracked. "We need to go now." Rena checked for a pulse, her hands shaking, but it was too late. Then it came. From behind a pine, it sprinted. Taller than Louis had imagined, hunched, the size of a bear but leaner. Its fur was coarse, limbs wiry, head canine-like with a long muzzle and glistening teeth. Its eyes burned with a cold intelligence, locking onto them. It hissed, swinging its maw, claws glinting in the flashlight's beam. Calvin yanked Louis back. Rena yelped. They ran, the creature's stench choking the air. The chase was a blur of terror. Branches whipped Louis's face. His lungs burned. The creature's rasp echoed behind them. At their camp, they found devastation. Sleeping bags shredded, food scattered, the orange tent in tatters. Calvin sprinted for the car but didn't make it. The creature caught him, claws pinning him to the earth. His scream cut off as his body went limp. Louis froze, fear rooting him. Rena pulled him toward the truck, slamming the doors as the creature's eyes gleamed in the dark. Rena drove, headlights slicing the gloom, until they reached a ranger station. They babbled about a monster, but rangers found only blood and torn fabric. No bodies, no tracks, no answers. Louis never returned to Mananaw. He moved to Pittsburgh, trading forests for concrete, but the memory of that rasp, that stench, haunts him. He sees Calvin's face in nightmares, hears Rena's choked sobs. Was it a territorial beast, a mutation born of polluted streams, or something older, woven into the Appalachian myths of skinwalkers and wendigos? Louis doesn't know, but he feels it watching, waiting in the pines. Rena, now a park ranger in Virginia, avoids deep woods, her pragmatism shattered. She told Louis once, in a late-night call, that she found a Shawnee tale about a shadow hound that hunts those who stray too far. Neither believes it fully, but neither dismisses it. Kenneth Mercer was a dreamer, a San Francisco graphic designer who found solace in nature's vastness. In June 2012, he and friends Raina and Miles drove to Redwood National Park, California, where trees older than Empire's Tower over fern-choked trails. The redwood's canopy filtered sunlight into warm rays, casting the forest in a cathedral-like glow. Their campsite, nestled among giant ferns, buzzed with laughter. Raina teased Kenneth for packing too many snack bars. Miles bragged about spotting poison ivy before anyone else. Kenneth, self-deprecating, quipped he'd win an award for fastest trip to a medevac if he tripped. They were city kids playing at wilderness, their banter a shield against the forest's quiet immensity. Redwood's history is heavy with mystery. The Yurok people speak of spirits in the trees, of shapes that move unseen. Kenneth didn't know these tales, but he felt the forest's weight, its silence a presence. On the second morning, they hiked to a waterfall, a shimmering curtain over a mossy ledge. Near the wet soil, Raina spotted tracks, paw-like but elongated, toes splayed unnaturally, larger than a cougar's. Miles, the group's nature buff, frowned, unable to place them. Raina joked about Bigfoot. Kenneth countered with a pun about Bigfoot not footing the dinner bill. The humor fell flat. The prints, pressed deep into the earth, seemed to watch them. That night, they built a bigger fire, stories turning tense. Raina turned in early, exhausted. Kenneth and Miles lingered, sharing childhood fears. Miles's dread of dark basements, Kenneth's of endless forests. A scream shattered the quiet. Raina's, raw and desperate. Kenneth scrambled out, flashlight cutting the cold air. More tracks led from her tent into the trees, deeper and fresher. They followed, hearts pounding, finding torn fabric and blood-stained leaves. Remnants of another camper, dragged away. The forest silence was suffocating, broken only by their ragged breaths. They retreated, crouching by the fire. Kenneth's weak joke about snack bars met with silence. At dawn, they packed to leave, but the redwoods' trails twisted, disorienting. Paths looped back on themselves, landmarks shifted. By afternoon, they reached the waterfall again, as if drawn by an unseen hand. New footprints, deeper, mingled with drag marks in the mud. A body lay nearby, a young man, battered, his backpack torn open. Raina wretched. Miles paled. The air grew heavy, the stench of rot seeping from the trees. Movement stirred behind broad leaves. It emerged, an animal, mountain lion-sized but wrong. Its limbs were too long, back ridged with bony plates beneath coarse fur. Its head, cat-like but with an overextended jaw, bared crooked teeth. Its eyes, yellow and unblinking, held a predator's focus. Charged, faster than thought. Miles threw a rock, giving Raina time to run. The creature pivoted, fixating on Miles, knocking him into the undergrowth. His scream echoed, then faded. Raina shrieked. Kenneth froze, then rushed forward, adrenaline surging. The thing dragged Miles deeper, its ridged back vanishing into ferns. Raina pulled Kenneth away, and they ran, stumbling through brambles until dusk. The forest seemed to tighten around them, branches clawing their skin. A ranger's truck found them on a dirt road, their clothes torn, faces pale. Search teams recovered blood, footprints, and Miles's torn jacket, but no body, no creature. Experts suggested a sick mountain lion, but Kenneth and Raina knew better. Those ridges, those eyes, they weren't natural. Kenneth, now a recluse in Oakland, sketches the creature in nightmares, its form blurring with Yurok tales of a forest devil that hunts the unwary. Raina, a botanist, studies redwoods but avoids their depths, haunted by Miles's scream. She found a ranger's log from the 1970s, describing similar tracks and missing hikers, dismissed as bear attacks. The redwoods keep their secrets, their silence a vault for horrors unseen. Frank Reading was a Clevelander, a warehouse worker who loved Ohio's Cuyahoga Valley National Park for its quiet trails and sycamore-lined creeks. In September 2011, he camped with friends Jared, Lucy, and Noah, expecting a weekend of familiarity. The park, a patchwork of forests and meadows, felt like home. Jared pointed at a drooping log, joking it had given up before they did. Frank claimed a spot near a crooked oak, half joking it'd be his new best friend if he got lonely. Lucy's laughter, Noah's quips about burnt pancakes, warmed the night. They were a family of sorts, bound by shared summers. Cuyahoga's history carries whispers of strangeness, Lenape tales of a crooked beast that stalks the valleys, of settlers vanishing in the 1800s. Frank didn't know these stories, but he felt the park's quiet intensity, its shadows deeper than they should be. On the first morning, Lucy found footprints near the creek. Large, wolf-sized but crooked, claws raking the mud. Frank tapped his chest, feigning bravado. "Anyone got a yardstick to measure my fear?" They laughed, but the prints lingered in their minds. They hiked a scenic trail, the air crisp, but Frank glimpsed something dark weaving between trees, too quick for a deer. Lucy saw it too, her eyes locking with his. They said nothing, hoping it was a trick of light. That night, a far-off snap broke the forest's hum, followed by another, heavier. Lucy tugged Frank's sleeve, whispering, "Let's check it out." They crept toward a stench of decay, like rotten steak left in the sun. Frank's flashlight caught a shape behind a maple, a large, hunched figure that slipped away, silent as smoke. Near the tree, they found a mound of fur and flesh, half-eaten, eyes wide in terror. The same crooked prints circled it, pressed deep into the earth. They hurried back, voices quivering. Jared's jokes grew forced. Noah's silence was louder than words. Past midnight, a metallic screech woke Frank, a raw, scraping sound that clawed the air. Lucy was outside, shining her light. Jared and Noah's tents were empty. They called out, finding Noah's crumpled form near ferns, chest shredded, blood pooling in the dirt. A rustle froze them. It emerged, wolf height but bipedal, limbs narrow, head elongated with jagged teeth. Its green eyes glowed, intelligent and cold, like a predator sizing its prey. It rumbled a savage breath, then scampered behind a trunk. Jared lay nearby, face down, leg twisted, dead. Lucy raised her hatchet as it circled back, lunging. She grazed its flank, drawing a piercing cry. It bounded into the dark, leaving a trail of foul air. Frank and Lucy fled, packing what they could. The forest seemed to shift, paths narrowing, trees leaning closer. Dawn's light didn't erase the dread. They reached a ranger station, their story spilling out in gasps. Searchers found Jared and Noah, but no creature, no matching tracks. Rangers blamed a rabid wolf, but Frank and Lucy knew better. Those eyes, that stance, it was no animal. Frank, now a truck driver, avoids Cuyahoga, haunted by that screech. Lucy, a librarian, researches local folklore, finding 19th century accounts of a green-eyed beast that hunts the valleys. She wonders if they stumbled into its territory, a relic of something ancient, stirred by their presence. Dwayne Barnes was a Tucson teacher, a man who found peace in the desert's stark beauty. In April 1997, he and friends Marcus, Vince, and Allison camped in Arizona's Saguaro National Park, where cacti stand like silent guardians. The air was warm, scented with creosote. Allison teased Dwayne for packing instant coffee, calling it a sin. Vince took a bite of Dwayne's jalapeno, turning red and croaking, "Last time I trust you with dinner." Marcus's one-liners about cacti booing his stand-up kept spirits high. They were a tight crew, their laughter a defiance of the desert's vastness. Saguaro's history is laced with unease, Hohokam legends of a scaled hunter that prowls the canyons, of prospectors vanishing in the 1800s. Dwayne didn't know these tales, but he felt the desert's watchfulness, its silence a warning. At midnight, a rustle broke the quiet, followed by a heavy thump, like something dropped from a boulder. Marcus's flashlight caught blinking eyes, too high for a coyote, glinting in the dark. Vince shrugged, joking about tax collectors, but his voice wavered. The next morning, they found a trashed campsite in a gorge, torn tent, scattered pots, a backpack with the student's ID. No footprints, just scraps of fabric. A crash of stones and a ragged screech followed. Dwayne glimpsed a shape darting between boulders, too big for a mountain lion. The stench of rotting meat hit them halfway back to camp, thick and cloying. They found a body, half buried under rocks, face slack, eyes wide. Marcus urged them to get help, but Dwayne's curiosity pushed them to search. Scratch marks scarred the sandstone. Coarse greenish hair clung to a cactus spine, clues of something unnatural. The creature rose from behind a rock, coyote-like but scaled, with massive hind legs and cunning eyes. Its body shimmered in the heat, a grotesque blend of reptile and mammal, charged, jaws snapping. Vince shouted, scattering them. Pounced on Vince, claws sinking into his chest. Allison screamed. Marcus threw a rock, but it pinned Vince, his body going limp. Dwayne and Allison hid behind boulders, Marcus waving a branch to distract it. The creature's jaws caught his leg, dragging him into the canyon. Dwayne and Allison ran, lost in a maze of cacti and stone. The desert seemed to conspire, shadows lengthening, rocks shifting. At dusk, they reached their campsite, radioing for help. Rangers found Marcus's body, torn and bloodied, but not Vince's. Only tracks like a giant lizard's, fading into the sand. Locals whispered of mutated species, of Cold War experiments gone awry. Dwayne, now retired, avoids the desert, haunted by those eyes. Allison, a nurse, found a 1920s journal describing a scaled demon that hunts Saguaro's canyons. She wonders if they woke something ancient, a predator forged by the desert's cruelty. These accounts, Lewis in Manana, Kenneth in Redwood, Frank in Cuyahoga, Dwayne in Saguaro, form a chilling tapestry. Each group sought refuge in the wild, armed with laughter and friendship. Each found signs of disruption. Strange tracks, foul odors, a abandoned camps. Each faced a creature that defied biology. Canine yet bipedal, scaled yet furred, intelligent yet savage. No ranger, no scientist could classify them. Official reports cited rogue predators, but the survivors knew better. These were no bears, no cougars. They were something else. Something that thrives in the wilderness's blind spots. John Langan's stories, like The Fisherman or The Wide, Carnivorous Sky, revel in this ambiguity, where horror stems not just from the monster, but from what it reveals about the world. These creatures feel like fragments of a larger truth, as if the wild guard's secrets were not meant to know. Are they undiscovered species, adapted to shadows? Mutations born from humanity's scars on the earth? Or something older, stirred by our footsteps? The survivors carry more than trauma. They carry questions that gnaw in the dark. The stories echo folklore across cultures. The Shawnee speak of shadow hounds in Appalachia, the Yurok of forest devils in California, the Lenape of crooked beasts in Ohio, the Hohokam of scaled hunters in Arizona. These tales, dismissed as myth, share a common thread. A predator that watches, waits, hunts. They suggest a truth older than science, a knowledge encoded in oral traditions. The wilderness, these stories warn, is not ours. It belongs to something else, something that knows our scent. The survivors' lives are fractured. Lewis's humor is gone, replaced by sleepless nights. Kenneth's art is haunted, his sketches a plea for answers. Frank's bravado is ash, his days spent avoiding shadows. Dwayne's love for the desert is poisoned, his dreams a maze of scales. Their stories, shared in hushed tones, form a chorus of loss, a warning to those who tread too far. Yet they also speak of resilience, of the human need to name the unnameable, to find meaning in terror. Reader, what would you do if you found those tracks near your tent? Would you flee, or would curiosity draw you into the dark? And if you heard that rasp, that screech in the night, could you sleep again? Share your thoughts below, and let's unravel this mystery together. The forests, deserts, and valleys stand as they always have, their silence a challenge. The forbidden excavation will keep digging, chasing the truths that lurk beyond the firelight. These stories, Lewis's, Kenneth's, Frank's, Dwayne's, are not just tales of horror but glimpses into a world we barely understand. The wilderness is vast, its secrets vaster. Subscribe and join us for the next tale, because out there something is watching and it's hungry.